This episode of Sovryn Tech is dedicated to Aaron Eisenberg. Nog. You made it.
Power on.
You wanted to see me, Commander.
Nog, I've given your request a lot of thought.
I appreciate that, Commander.
But I'm afraid I'm going to have to turn you down.
Turn me down? Why? Did I do something wrong?
It's not anything you did, Nog. You're just not Academy material. Here. This belongs to you.
Commander, can't we talk about this?
There's nothing to talk about. We both know you'd never make it through the Academy. You couldn't handle the workload or the discipline. You wouldn't last 2 weeks.
That's not true! I'm a hard worker! I proved that to you!
It doesn't matter. And I'm not going to put my reputation on the line just to satisfy some whim of yours.
It's not just a whim. I'm serious about joining Starfleet.
I don't have time for this, Nog. Now, whatever little scheme you had, you can forget it. I'm not giving you that letter.
It's not a joke or a scheme. I want to join Starfleet. I want it more than anything I've ever wanted in my life.
You're a Ferengi. Why would you want to be in Starfleet? Where's the profit in it?
I don't care about profit.
Then what do you care about? Come on, Nog, tell me. Why is it so damned important that you get into Starfleet? Why are you doing this?
Because I don't want to end up like my father.
Your father?
That's right, my father. He's been chasing profit his whole life. And what has it gotten him? Nothing. Well, I'm not going to make the same mistake. I want to do something with my life, something worthwhile.
Earth, 2019. Dominant species, human. Galactic potential rating, 0. Cultural affiliation, combination of government and global businesses, corporatism, legacy institution. Species still conservative, superstitious, and religious. Ecologically illiterate, largely unaware of cosmological foundation of love. Level of technological dependence is disturbingly higher than the galactic standard. Species distracted and behavior controlled by technology companies. System error. Advanced concepts detected beyond normal human levels. New galactic potential rating, over 9,000. Transmission type, podcast. Host, The Man of Tomorrow. Brian Sovryn. Source, Sovryn Tech.
The Golden Stallion, the Man of Tomorrow, Savzu, the rated R radio star, the man who is always wearing triple black, even in the gym, is here for you. And you know, I always hate having to open a show with sad news. If you heard the opening of this episode, Aaron Eisenberg, at the age of 50, which, you know, as I say all the time on this show, you know, any age is too young, but holy fuck, 50. I mean, and 2019 has been such a, well, especially even for Sovryn Tech and even on a personal level for this show and for me, it's been a terrible year as far as losses of beautiful human beings. And Aaron Eisenberg was, will probably be best known as Lieutenant Nog, or who would become Lieutenant Nog, on Star Trek Deep Space Nine, playing the Ferengi. And what a great character, you know, because I feel like, and we got lots to get into in this episode, folks. The news just dropped on, I guess it'd be Saturday the 21st. I think it was Saturday night. This is getting released on Sunday the 22nd of September 2019. I mean, you know, especially it's really sad. Okay, now let me backtrack. The Ferengi in Star Trek would become, not when they first appeared in The Next Generation. Okay, and look, Sovereign Tech and Star Trek are, I mean, it's like it's like peanut butter and jelly. All right, Star Trek is why so many of us are even here, philosophically, ideologically, technologically, and so on. We recognize that on this show, as much as the show is nonfiction, right? The Ferengi would become, I think, very much a lot of species, a lot of different things within Star Trek. Star Trek would use a lot of different story elements, characterization, alien races, whatever, to put on display aspects of humanity. And I think the Ferengi, in many ways, would show certain aspects taken to extremes, or maybe not so extreme, maybe very real, unfortunately, but would take certain parts of humanity, in fact, parts that we're probably going to talk about here in a second, for our opening story. Or, well, maybe I'll put the story after. I'm still deciding on that as I record here. But puts them on display. And to have the character of Nog so brilliantly played by Aaron Eisenberg, who was technically well, I know we're supposed to say little person, not supposed to say midget and all this, but you get the score. And, you know, both them and giants are two types of people that often have shorter lives, so I guess it's not a surprise. We don't know what Aaron Eisenberg died from as yet. Regardless, Nog was a character, a very inspirational character in my opinion, that would, I mean, here's the thing, is that Nog would call as much bullshit on how humans or the members of the Federation would live as much as he would make certain aspects of Ferengi life ridiculous, and then would ultimately come, say, the third season and so on, which if you heard the opening audio, that's from the third season of Star Trek Deep Space Nine, that would ultimately find redemption in all of that. And it speaks to a point, you know, just in the last episode 342 of Sovereign Tech, we were talking about Star Trek the Motion Picture during the climax. How the character, we were talking in that, how at the end, and I do want to have a big conversation around this on another Zomia 1 show, that being Sovereign Trek, which is a show all about Star Trek. How Spock was showing what it was a way of exploring what humanity could be. Not that Vulcans were what humanity could be, but specifically Spock. I think very much Nog is the same thing. And I could have a very large conversation around the character of Nog, especially since, and this is something I was going to say earlier, it's tragic that this occurs after the What We Left Behind documentary about Deep Space Nine, which finally released this year, both in theaters, finally came out on Blu-ray. I have my Blu-ray. If you've listened to Zomia 1 content, like underground content that you know is behind a paywall, you'll know a little bit more about that. We haven't gotten to the review yet for it on Sovereign Trek, but that will eventually come. I've been trying to get that done for some time, but you know, it's on me and some other, you know, scheduling and all this other stuff. So anyway, that documentary has been making the rounds and getting a lot of exposure, and you know, has really been giving people a second look at Deep Space Nine and a much kinder look at it. And Nog was such a quintessential character, I think, in that series. It's a shame for Aaron Eisenberg to not be able to, right now, reap the benefits of tremendous work that he did and tremendous commentary that he made on life. You know, and that great fiction, especially great science fiction, can do that. And he was a part of it and delivered it directly. There are bonus features actually in the Blu-ray release of What We Left Behind, where there's a lot more from Aaron Eisenberg in it. It's very emotional stuff. I absolutely recommend checking that out. But what a loss! Anytime we lose somebody in the Star Trek family, it always, for me, they're ones that hit a little harder than most, and are because Star Trek is such a core part of who I am. I mean, it really is. And I know I'm not the only one. There's a lot of us. I mean, fuck. Ellen's the same way. Star Trek is a very core part of who she is. When you're into Star Trek, you are into Star Trek. We all know it's more than a TV show. But I say all this just to say that, I'll anytime, a major part of the Star Trek family dies, it's tragic. And when anyone dies, it's tragic. Anyone. I think we all lose something whenever, part of this species that we happen to belong to, when we lose someone in it, I think it's always a loss. But in any case, I have dedicated an episode to basically, anyone in the Star Trek family that has passed, any major player. And Aaron Eisenberg is, again, another one where, yeah. And if you really follow the character's arc, I think a lot of us can relate to it. In fact, the part that I wanted to go deep on is in that documentary that I mentioned, What We Left Behind. You'll pardon me for talking about this. This is old school stuff that we used to do on Sovryn Tech, right? Because before I had Zomi One, before I had a whole network where I had separate shows where I could talk about this stuff, a lot of times I'd open up and we'd get into the geeky shit. Don't worry, we have big subjects to talk about. We're going to talk about automation in fast food places. We're going to talk about quantum supremacy. We're going to talk about whether or not quantum computers are the deal that rumors are going around right now claim to be. We've got plenty to get into, so don't worry, you're going to get plenty of tech. Just bear with me. If you want to fast forward a few minutes because holy shit, I can't stand somebody talking about Star Trek, fine, go ahead. But this is important. This goes well beyond Star Trek. What We Left Behind, that DVD document, or that documentary about Deep Space Nine. In it, there's a point where they talk about how characters within Deep Space Nine inspired them. There's people, these are just people at conventions and everything, inspired them to join the military. And I'm like, and I see that and I go cross-eyed and glassy-eyed, and it's like, holy fuck. Like, especially with the character of Nog. Nog has these delusions of grandeur of, like being this hero during the Dominion War in Deep Space Nine. And, tragically within the fictional story, he gets humbled, and loses his leg. And and it's like and it's something that affects him, the rest of his life. And I have to give Deep Space Nine credit for showing, no, you know what? War fucking sucks, which is one of the first messages that Star Trek really delivered in the original series, particularly the episode of Taste of Armageddon, where, these two races are fighting a war over a computer. They've made it really clean, and people just like walk into these disintegration chambers when supposedly when the computer says a bomb was dropped, even though a bomb's not really dropped. They made war clean. And, Kirk very, very poignantly says, no, I'm going to bring back, because he destroys the computer that allows them to fight this war. And he says, you're going to have to fight a real war now. And the guy goes nuts about it. Anon Seven's the character's name. He goes nuts about it and says, like, do you realize what you've done? It's like, this is going to be horrible. And he says, yeah, I've brought you, and, Kirk says, I brought back the horrors of war. So you learn why it's to be avoided. Admittedly, Nog was a close character to delivering a very anti-war message. Admittedly, Star Trek does not always do the best job of making the case of anti-war the case. Like, they really can do a very shitty job of that. And that's a conversation maybe I could have for a Sovryn Trek. If someone wants me to get into it, I could, around the military and Star Trek. Because, it's not... there's a part of me that understands... Of course, I'm a veteran. There's a part of me that understands where you can watch Star Trek and say, oh, well, I want to join the military. But then also there's a part of Star Trek where there's the lip service of Star Trek that really only ever got paid off, ironically, in what we ended off the last episode with, that being Star Trek the Motion Picture, where Starfleet really doesn't look like a military organization in that. Right down to the fact that the crew's wearing, the uniforms, which everybody makes fun of from Star Trek the Motion Picture. I think they're fucking great. Those uniforms are practically pajamas. Like, those are not military uniforms, as to where it turns into something very different very quickly. as you can see in like Star Trek II and so on. But yeah, I mean, Star Trek the Motion Picture is maybe the only occasion where Starfleet and the Federation acts like the supposed peace-loving exploratory organization that it is, or that it claims to be. The rest of the time, I gotta admit it, Starfleet does feel very much, even though Gene Roddenberry would say no it's not, Captain Picard would say no it's not, that it's not a military organization and so on, it sure as fuck acts like one. There's a kind of big conversation to have around that, but Nog was one of those characters that at least explored that part of things, and I think did so very well. And so it's an impressive character to explore, and if you want to celebrate the life of Aaron Eisenberg, I think it's a fine way to do it, to appreciate one of the best commentaries that he brought through fiction, through Star Trek Deep Space Nine, brought upon humanity in general. So anyway, wow, talked about 10 minutes on that. didn't plan on it. Speaking of another quick thing, speaking of a little fiction, a book that I think you absolutely should check out. I'm not going to do a full review here because, well, I don't know how many people would necessarily be interested in this. I know I have a lot of Star Trek fans in my, listener base. I can tell that by, download numbers of the show I do about Star Trek. But boy, I found out about this book, fucking awesome, called Knight Rider Legacy, by Joe Huth IV and Richie Levine. It's from 2004. I don't know how I didn't know that this book didn't exist, or I didn't know that it existed. It's the unofficial guide to the Knight Rider universe. God damn, this has been a great read. There's no audiobook of it, unfortunately. I'd be happy to turn it into one, but it's an awesome, awesome read. In fact, they get a lot of quotes from like Glenn Larson. Of course, Glenn Larson has done a lot of my favorite works, basically most of my favorite shit outside of Star Trek. Battlestar Galactica, Buck Rogers, Knight Rider, Nightman. Nightman. Along with, I dug The Fall Guy. I thought that was cool. But I'm a huge Galactica fan. The real Battlestar Galactica, not the new horse shit. In fact, holy shit, let me just bring it up here quick. Normally I would talk about this stuff on a Wednesday Q&A on Zomeo 1. Which I have a special release of a Zomeo 1 Underground Q&A that was requested by Underground members for me. They wanted me to release it openly, so I'm going to put it into the main feed so you can get a taste of what our paid for content looks like on Zomeo 1 when I do that. But NBC's coming out with they're coming out with their own streaming service, which is kind of hilarious. There's a comment to have around this. Okay, if I can remember, I'm going to get to it. NBC's coming out with their own streaming service because, that's what we need. We need another goddamn streaming service. Ugh. It's called Peacock, which I can't wait for those, fans of Katy Perry that know her song Peacock. Was that off a Teenage Dream? I want to see your peacock, which obviously it's meant to be a reference to Big Cock. I'm just waiting for somebody for like the NBC ads to be quasi-sexual and say, you got to see Peacock, or you got to see my peacock, or I want to see my peacock. They're going to say shit like that. I guarantee it. That's going to happen. Anyway, great time for a Blue Chew ad. Maybe I'll do one after this. But anyway, they're coming out with their own streaming service. I'll tell you why that's funny in a second. But on that, they are getting the guy who did Mr. Robot, which you would think I'd love that show, right? Because I'm into the cypherpunk community, have been basically my whole life, as long as I've been conscious of such things. And I hate the show, but the guy who made Mr. Robot is going to be making supposedly it's not a reboot. I don't think they know what the fuck they're talking about. I have no idea, but they're making another Battlestar Galactica. So supposedly it is not a remake. Apparently the guy is a big fan of what Ronald Moore did, which means I couldn't care fucking less about seeing it, because if it's based around Ronald Moore's Battlestar Galactica, I could just I fucking hate it. I hate it. If it was a sequel to the 79 Galactica, that'd be awesome. I'd be on board with that, which is what Glenn Larson made. Anyway, because, in fact, maybe part of the reason that the original Galactica was so great, and this is something I learned when reading this Knight Rider Legacy book, as Glenn Larson was saying, he's like, yeah, it's like, so, I was talking with Isaac Asimov and we were planning things of what to include in Battlestar Galactica and Buck Rogers, and I'm like, wait, whoa, you know, like I wanted to stop, and I wanted to just, I mean, Glenn Larson sadly has passed away as well, and I talk about a brilliant fucking producer of creative content. Holy shit. I mean, he has done the stuff. I mean, Knight Rider, for fuck's sake. Anyway, I just wanted to talk to him and say, well, wait a minute, what were you and Isaac talking about? You know, what were you and Isaac Asimov talking about? One of the most brilliant guys to ever grace the earth. And yes, Isaac Asimov was. Right up there with Carl Sagan, go down the list. Well, you know, you guys were talking about shit for Galactica and Buck Rogers? Oh, man. Like what I'd give to know what the hell those conversations were. Those had to be amazing. But I guess that goes to show, I mean, why those shows were so damn good, Galactica and Buck Rogers, back in the day, because, well, I mean, they had input from fucking Isaac Asimov. Oh, it was I mean, that's the beauty of when you broaden, I mean, I'm not really broadening my horizons here. I'm a huge Knight Rider fan. That's not a surprise to anybody. I mean, it's well known, but it was amazing to, like, read that and learn that, which has almost nothing to do with Knight Rider. It's like, oh, fuck, like, and boy, I wanted to know more. Anyway, great book. Now, okay, the funny thing about NBC having their own streaming service, here's a little tech angle for you, okay? Do you know who runs Hulu? NBC. NBC Universal is like one of the primary players behind Hulu. And it's funny because you see the ads for Hulu, right? And it's all about, oh, don't you want to get, aren't you tired of the networks and tired of all this stuff? In fact, I think the Hulu ads directly make fun of NBC. Here's the fucking rub. NBC owns Hulu. Like, I mean, basically, they own Hulu. Like, they're just playing with you in the marketing. Marketing's always just playing with you. All marketing is playing with you. It's so goddamn bad. It's so bad. Do you get it? And then they feel like they have to come out with their own streaming service. I mean, we've talked about this in past episodes, like The Cult of Netflix. There's an episode actually called that. I mean, this isn't sustainable. Like, this absolutely cannot go on the way that it's going on. Something's going to crack. If anything, I mean, I could almost believe that, like, Disney could just I mean, I think ultimately you're going to end up with Disney and Netflix. As good at content or as seemingly good at content. I mean, like Strange Angels and Twilight Zone and, you know, maybe Star Trek Picard that CBS All Access is doing. I mean, there's it's good at content because Strange Angels is great. Twilight Zone, I was fairly impressed by. I mean, like, there's good shit going on with CBS All Access. There really is. And also the fact that it allows you to watch CBS, the network, which can be beneficial if you don't have over-the-air or, over-the-air HD, or if you don't have cable or whatever. Anyway, I could really see a future where it's just going to basically be Netflix and Disney Plus. I mean, Disney Plus with Marvel and Star Wars alone. I mean, they're just going to own so many asses, and that's coming out in November 12th, right? I mean, again, this can't go on. This is really just going to fall apart. I mean, the cost... No, anyway, I don't want to get into another big conversation around all this shit. Even Netflix, I don't think, can sustain what it's presently doing as a business model. I am going to be reviewing, of course, I'm not watching it on Netflix because fuck Netflix. I am going to be reviewing, Inside Bill's Brain, which is that little mini-series they did about Bill Gates. I will be watching that, and I will do it for a review on Sovryn Tech in the near future, just to keep that in mind. But god damn it, these people are just... They're fucking with you right and left, you know? Get a Hulu subscription. You don't want to deal with the networks anymore. The networks own Hulu. Oh, fucking fuck. It's people. Anyway, you know what? So instead of watching Peacock, why don't you go for the big cock and try Blue Chew? Let's run this ad, baby. Sovryn Tech sponsor Blue Chew. Why is it called Blue? Why is it called Blue Chew? Because it's the blue pill, and BLUE. Okay, it's blue and it's chewable. All right, but it has the same active ingredients as Viagra and Cialis. Okay, you want to get rocking? You want that baby in your pants, hard as can be, ready to go all night long? you want to jump on Blue Chew. Go to bluechew.com, B-L-U-E Chew, because it's a chewable, C-H-E-W, bluechew.com. Okay, and this is going to be discreet. There's no doctor office visits, none of that bullshit. You go there, you take care of everything right online, gets to you discreetly, and here's the beauty of it, okay? Your first order of Blue Chew, you can get it for free, but you got to use the code TECH, T-E-C-H. You're only going to pay $5 shipping. But this is a great deal, and trust me, I am a fan, okay? I'm a fan of Blue Chew, and I'm a guy that can already perform, you know what I mean? I mean, this can help out those that, that maybe don't, whatever. I mean, the possibility's there. But if you just want to up that performance, like that's what I'm about, baby, rock Blue Chew. You're going to love it. Use that code TECH. Go to bluechew.com. Use the code TECH. Get your first order for free. $5 shipping. That's all. Why not? I know a lot of you like to experiment with stuff. Well, here's an experiment to run. bluechew.com. Jump on it. And then, jump in the sack, baby, and make it happen. That's bluechew.com. Use the code TECH, and we thank them for sponsoring Sovryn Tech. All right. Let's get into our main story I was debating on where I wanted to run with this. You know what? I am going to open up with, I wasn't initially going to do this. I wasn't going to open up with this story, but I'm going to open up with this story. We're kind of doing things backwards. Okay. When we get to HackSec, I'm going to cover what really was going to be this story. What I mean is this story was originally going to be in HackSec, and then the story that's going to be in HackSec was originally going to be here. So consider this HackSec, and then consider HackSec to be story of the week. Make sense? Okay. As long as we're all confused, let's keep going. And I think because this subject, people are terribly confused on. And I mean, this is one of those things I feel like you talk to anybody and you're just going to get 20 different answers. Like nobody really has a firm grasp on this stuff. And there are very simple conclusions to come to that I think raise the red flag on this whole subject. And what we're going to talk about here is a subject we've brought up many times on Sovryn Tech and that I've seesawed on. Okay. And that being quantum computers. There's times where I think, holy shit, this is bullshit. I certainly think most of the news coming out about quantum computers is unimpressive. Even if it is, all right, let's break it down here. A quantum computer, very simply, this is where you get 20 different answers. This is where you can't get a straight answer. A quantum computer is a different architecture from the ground up. It's a different architecture from a classical computer that runs off of binary, zeros and ones. Okay, it is a different way of building a computer. And what it allows for is, and why it has the word quantum in it, is it allows for, instead of things being 0, 1, a computer, a classical computer, the laptop, the phone that you're probably listening, the smartphone that you're listening to this on, runs off of a linear processing of zeros and ones. Okay? I mean, you have, with classical computers, you can have multiple cores, right, for the CPU, and that allows for a degree of parallel processing of those zeros and ones, but it's still being done in a linear progression. With a quantum computer, you can calculate those zeros and ones at the same time. You are not going in a linear processing direction. Okay? You can do it at the same time. And so the basic concept is, and this is important when we get into this, the basic concept is that a quantum computer can solve a problem in seconds. What would take, this is the argument, or this is where we're trying to get to, and I'll tell you what this means. A quantum computer can solve a problem, or, which is a calculation, okay, which can perform a calculation in seconds, what would take a classical binary computer, digital, 10,000 years to do. That's the argument. And this, when a quantum computer can finally do that over a classical computer, that is what's known as quantum supremacy. Okay? And this is what everybody's going for. Do quantum computers exist? Yes. Computers that are built, and I'm trying to be very clear in this, so that way these arguments can actually be had, considered and you are informed when you start seeing all these bullshit headlines for this, okay, for quantum computers. Like there was a headline that, what was it? IBM, I think they're creating, the quantum computation center that they're building in New York State. They're announcing that they're going to have a 53 qubit system there, along with a bunch of 20 qubit systems. Anyway, when you see these headlines, you're like, oh, the quantum computer is here. Okay, let's have clarity on this. Yes, computers built in the fashion of quantum computers with that architecture as compared to the binary digital architecture of a classical computer. Quantum computers are being made and they exist. Okay, there are also simulators that you can test, quantum computing simulators that you can actually run, ironically, on a classical computer. Here's the rub. While those do exist, okay, and you can talk about D-Wave computers that Google has, all these other things. What you have to consider is, have they achieved quantum supremacy? Okay, now, this is where people get confused. No one's really saying that quantum computers don't exist. They do exist. However, have these quantum computers achieved quantum supremacy? That's the rub. But there's another rub to all this, and that's quantum usefulness. We'll talk about that in a second. Okay, we got to get to that point because that is absolutely fucking key. Now, this is from Science News. This little story I'm going to read here, and this is very fresh. This is just from a couple days ago. We're in September 2019, and here's the headline: Rumors hint that Google has accomplished quantum supremacy. Now, that is one of the more honest headlines that I've seen around this story, because at the very least, they are saying, well, it's rumored that Google has accomplished quantum supremacy. A lot of news outlets, tech news outlets and others, have basically said Google has achieved quantum supremacy. Which again, remember, quantum supremacy is a quantum computer has performed a calculation that a classical computer cannot, or in a way that it is impractical for a classical computer to do so, i.e., it would take it 10,000 years. Now, let's read it again. There's a major key point here to get to. Okay, so let's talk about this. Reports suggest a quantum computer has surpassed standard computers on a specific type of calculation. It's by Emily Conover. A leaked paper suggests that Google, and I think it was the Financial Times that found it. Anyway, reading on. A leaked paper suggests that Google has achieved a milestone known as quantum supremacy, using a quantum computer to perform a calculation that couldn't be achieved even with the world's most powerful supercomputers. It's a hotly anticipated goal, and one intended to mark the beginning of a new era of quantum computation, but it's also largely symbolic. The calculation in question serves no practical purpose and is designed to be difficult for classical computers, standard computers that are not rooted in quantum physics. On September 20th, the Financial Times reported, that a scientific paper briefly published on a NASA website before being removed claims that Google has built a quantum computer that achieved quantum supremacy. It's a benchmark that the company's quantum researchers, led by physicist John Martinez of the University of California, Santa Barbara, have set their sights on for years. An apparent plain text version of the paper, posted anonymously on the site Pastebin, has since been circulating among scientists on Twitter. Which that should be a terrifying idea. Well, I'm still going to have that Twitter conversation, folks, where we got to talk about that, the subject of Twitter. Maybe in the next episode, because you're getting a triple load. This is part of a double load of back-to-back episodes of Sovereign Tech. You might get one more, or I plan on you getting one more this week. Anyway, going on. A spokesperson for Google declined to comment to Science News. According to the Pastebin version of the paper, Google created a quantum computer named Sycamore with 54 quantum bits called qubits, 53 of which were functional. So this is fairly comparable to what IBM has. Now, understand, let me finish this. The researchers used it to perform a series of operations in 200 seconds that would take a supercomputer about 10,000 years to complete. Okay, so that's the metric. Okay, now understand that Google has more powerful quantum computers, which is kind of interesting. In fact, they have one that's called Bristlecone that is a 72 qubit device. I don't know if that's the most powerful quantum computer out there, but it's definitely up there. Anyway, reading on. The calculation consists of performing random operations on the qubits and reading out the result. After doing this many times, the researchers are left with a nearly random assortment of numbers, one that is extremely difficult to reproduce with a classical computer. Despite its lack of applications, quantum supremacy has been billed as a major breakthrough in the quest for a quantum computer that could eventually perform useful, keyword, useful calculations that are not possible with classical computers. Quote, this dramatic speed up relative to all known classical algorithms provides an experimental realization of quantum supremacy on a computational task and heralds the advent of a much anticipated computing paradigm. End quote. The text of the Paceman paper reads, the machines might eventually be capable of defeating encryption techniques. This is where, stop and hear. This is where the conversation starts to become interesting anytime you bring up quantum computers. And I'm not saying good, I'm just saying interesting. The first thing, and the reason anybody starts to sweat about quantum computers, is when it comes into play that basically quantum computers, the argument goes, is that quantum computers could defeat all classical computing-based encryption methods. Now, there are companies, and we have talked about this over the years on Sovryn Tech, one of the benefits of having one of the longest running tech shows on the fucking planet. Woo! Like couple of years ago, or maybe it was 2-3 years ago, ironically, was it BlackBerry? Yeah, that BlackBerry. BlackBerry was developing basically an encryption scheme designed to thwart quantum computers. Will they be able to pull this off? At the very least, I'm glad that they're starting the conversation on this whole thing. Okay. But let's read on. But yeah, this is where things get interesting because, what does this say? I mean, a lot of people in, say, the cryptocurrency space and in the blockchain space, they sweat about this. And I understand why. In that, so much of, like, even with Bitcoin and so on, I mean, so much of it is reliant upon the, asymmetric key encryption to secure it, that if you had a quantum computer that could just break through all that, then, I mean, a lot of these cryptocurrencies could be fucked. That's a very reasonable thing it's something to bring up. It's something to start paying attention to and to wonder about. I know that there are people in the cryptocurrency space working on this. I mean, there's people who talk about doing lattice schemes of encryption, which you can read up on a lot of this. There are, as of right now, and I've read both of them, there are only a couple books that even bother to talk about quantum encryption, or anti-quantum encryption, if you want to call it that. There are very, very few on the subject. And I mean, you read them and it's kind of troubling. And it's troubling that there's so little going on about it. I'm glad there's companies like BlackBerry. I mean, granted, they're trying to stay relevant. And security has always kind of been their bread and butter. I'm glad there's at least companies talking about it, but there's something to get to with all of this. I'm going to finish reading this usefulness part. Okay. And then we'll go from there. Okay, yeah, let's see. The machines might eventually be capable of defeating encryption techniques used to secure certain transmissions, such as financial transactions made by computers. But that advance will require many more qubits and a method to correct the errors that inevitably creep into quantum calculations. Quote, while this is a milestone, it is very far from being a quantum computer that can compute anything useful, end quote. Physicist Jonathan Oppenheim of University College London wrote on Twitter. Not everyone agrees that quantum supremacy is a useful benchmark. Quote, quantum computers are not supreme against classical computers because of a laboratory experiment designed to essentially and almost certainly exclusively implement one very specific quantum sampling procedure with no practical applications, end quote. IBM's director of research, Dario Gil, wrote in a statement sent to Science News. IBM is developing their own line of quantum computers. I think we mentioned those earlier, Stallion breaking in, reading on, and researchers there prefer to talk about quantum advantage, which they define as, quote, the point at which quantum applications deliver a significant practical benefit beyond what classical computers alone are capable, end quote. The new result falls short of that standard. So, okay, whether or not this is true, again, it's rumors right now. It's stuff put up on Pastebin, and I don't think anybody's confirmed it to date. This is only a couple days, but this conversation is important to have. Quantum computers being something that, like, maybe you'd buy in the future, okay? We are decades, probably, away from that, okay? My opinion. Now, what IBM calls quantum advantage, that is where I use the term quantum usefulness, Okay. And when I have over the years debated like about quantum computers, like, is this really a quantum computer? Blah, blah, blah. That is what I have meant over the years, is that, okay, this might be built on the quantum computing structure. Like, this is the framework that a quantum computer gets built upon as compared to a classical binary digital computer. But is it actually, like, does it do anything? No. Okay, yeah, it is a quantum computer, but it doesn't do anything. So it doesn't have what IBM calls a quantum advantage, or what I call quantum usefulness. And that's a big conversation happening right now. It's like, okay, we can do this, but so what? Like, what does it do for anybody? And in fact, the sad part is that the bulk of what people come up with when they have these conversations about quantum usefulness, they're all bad. Like breaking all of the encryption that we have developed, over the past few decades, with classical computing, PGP, and so on. So you don't want these things, right? That's a very real concern. In fact, now normally I'm going to recommend this to folks. Okay, this is a very recent from another show. It's a very recent podcast. I am not a fan of the Joe Rogan podcast, but a fucking great Sovereign Tech listener that I love shared a episode of Joe Rogan with me that had a hero of mine, John Carmack, on, who right now is the head of Oculus, but is best known for making Doom and a lot of other stuff, and just an all-around brilliant guy. You gotta listen to that episode. If I think of it, I'll put it in the show notes. Listen to that episode. And the funny thing is that a million things that I've said over the past 7 years on Sovereign Tech, John Carmack verifies, or he seconds the motions that I've made over the years, including the debate over the quantum usefulness of quantum computers. Okay. So we're decades away from quantum computers becoming a threat. That's the argument right now, or that's what's being laid out here. That's what's part of this article. Whether or not, and this is the key I want to get to. This is the key point that has to be brought up. Okay. The reason I'm sharing this story with you, A, is to, well, as we're about to describe, debunk whether or not this matters. Okay. Or to debunk that this matters. But B, is that I want you to have the tools of conversation. What a quantum computer is, what it needs to do, what they do, what they are, and whether or not any of this actually means anything. And here is the rub. We really don't know if this means a goddamn thing. Here's why. So, the specific computation. This is not in the story here. I'm bringing it up to you, okay? Because this is something all right, well, I'll get saucy and I'll say it. As a cryptographer, this is something I have studied over the years. And again, we have had this conversation over and over again. Episodes from 5-6 years ago where I did reviews of the books on quantum encryption, and we talked about it. And, I gave you my thoughts on the whole thing. And anyway, and I've had conversations with people in the blockchain space, people who are heads of major blockchain projects. What are they doing to get into this? And not all those conversations go very well. I'm not going to name names, but they, it's certainly not meeting my satisfaction. And I'm rooting for some of these people. But anyway, so this specific one done on Sycamore, Google's quantum computer called Sycamore, the 54 quantum bit or qubit quantum computer. Again, it did an operation in 200 seconds that would take a supercomputer, a classical supercomputer, 10,000 years to complete. That is the exact metric. Now, it's just one problem. That's an issue in and of itself. Okay, it did one thing and it did it right. That's great. Round of applause. I don't want to take anything away from anybody, but it's just one thing that it did. Again, that brings up the conversation of quantum usefulness. Well, did it do anything useful? No, it's just something that a classical computer can do. Oh! So right there, who cares? But that said, okay, even if you did care about that, here's the other rub. It solved a problem. It did a computation, a calculation. Now, if it takes, listen to me carefully, because here's the rub against this whole thing. If it takes 10,000 years for a classical computer that, we have hammered on and we now more or less trust is going to come out with the right answer. Because there was a time where computers, and I would say this is still true in many cases, where you had to verify the conclusion that a computer came to. Okay, the reliance upon that we have with a lot of computers today, A, may be misguided in and of itself, but B, comes from a lot of research and a lot of hard-earned, there's a lot of hard-earned lessons in the computer that you have sitting in front of you right now, or say the smartphone that you have in your pocket. That makes it something that you can at least somewhat rely on. If a quantum computer is the only thing that can do this problem, and with such speed, 200 seconds, if it takes 10,000 years for a classical computer to do it, here's the thing. We won't actually know if Sycamore, this quantum computer, actually got the right answer for 10,000 years. So here's where you want to call bullshit, right? Is that is this even really quantum supremacy? Okay, you could say that it solved a problem. Sure, it gave you an answer, but we don't have a way of verifying whether or not the answer that Sycamore gave is right for another 10,000 years. So is this actually quantum supremacy? We don't know. And arguably, you could say you can know. So the quantum usefulness is still heavily up to debate. Okay, consider this. Okay, this is how I want you to think of, or this is how I'd like you to think about this. Let's have an analogy, shall we? Even though proof by analogy isn't proof. You can make something that can, all right, a water wheel. That's a handy thing to have, right? Back in the day, you can have a water wheel that can go 1,000 miles per hour. Can you actually get water off of that and make it useful to you to sustain, your farm or your own life and things like this? No, it's completely impractical to have a water wheel that goes 1,000 miles per hour. If the purpose of it is to serve your farm, and whatever, help you get food on the table ultimately, or do whatever the fuck you want this water wheel to do. They have a million uses. So what the fuck good is 1,000 mile per hour water wheel compared to one that goes, not even a mile per hour and is incredibly slow, but but actually does something useful and gets a shit ton of jobs done. That's my point. Okay. That's the point that I've been making, off and on Sovryn Tech for a long time. Great. Quantum computers exist. They are real. It is a different architecture from the binary digital architecture that we know of with classical computing. But is it useful? That is still up to fucking debate. And it's going to be up to debate, I think, for a very, very long time. That doesn't mean don't try, but it does mean don't get too hot and bothered. All right. Don't get too excited about this shit. All right? And that's all that I'm saying to people, is that don't fall for these headlines are marketing. I would, if I wanted to get conspiratorial about it, I would say that Google knew IBM's announcement, because these announcements happen within like 24 hours of each other, where IBM announced their computer that is comparable to Sycamore. Okay, which, 54, or it's a 53 qubit, but again, Sycamore only has 53, it only had, 53 quantum bits or qubits that are functional. It's ironic that, there's this leak of a Google paper where Sycamore did something just after IBM announces, hey, we're going to build this nice big 53 qubit quantum computer. This is dick measuring, Silicon Valley style. If I wanted to get conspiratorial about it, I would say that's all this really is. Google leaked this themselves to fuck with whatever IBM's doing in this competition. And I guess they think there might be some usefulness to this competition. Oh, it's just like AI. Like, stop, And I've had plenty of conversations around AI over the years on this show, and I call bullshit on most of that as well, because, it's the same. That's the thing, is that so much of what comes out about quantum computers, it's the same hype cycle that's existed literally since the 60s with artificial intelligence. It's the same hype cycle. Yeah, there are things that you could call artificial intelligence, but they're not Skynet. They're not AGI, right? They're not artificial general intelligence. And go back and look, Satan bless Marvin Minsky, a hero of mine. I think Marvin Minsky was one of the most brilliant people. We were talking about brilliant people that have graced the earth. He was one of the most brilliant guys to ever grace the earth. Okay, look, AI was, the whole concept was developed in the very backyard of where I am, at Dartmouth, in New Hampshire, you understand. Not in Silicon Valley. I know, and I've been at the buildings where you can hear and read all of the original, like, bold claims that were being made in the 60s, and they were basically saying, oh, we're going to have fucking AGI inside of 10 years. This is in the 1960s. Do you need to look at well, you're probably not wearing a watch, unfortunately. You fucking should, but you're probably not. Look at your watch, look at your smartphone, look at your notification center on your stupid bullshit Windows 10 machine. I don't care where you got to look. Look at the year! It's 2019. If there was ever a singular message to come out of Sovryn Tech, it is this and this alone. Maybe not this alone, but it is this. This is maybe the strongest one. Don't buy into the marketing. And tech journalists are as much a part of the marketing machine for Silicon Valley and government and whoever else as any open advertising agency is. Don't buy it. Hell, I hate to say it, a lot of tech podcasts. You know, I mean, and podcasts are one of the very rare places where you can get any kind of real truth in the world today. Sure as hell not going to find it on a website. But, well, I mean, maybe some. Good luck finding it in a YouTube video, okay? But even a lot of tech podcasts are just part of the marketing machine for these fucking companies. Why did I spend the last episode of Sovryn Tech for an hour ripping on the iPhone 11? Because I am trying to shake people's brains out of this marketing madness. And I want you to consider, you don't have to be utilitarian, fuck utilitarianism, but I want you to consider that word usefulness. And I want you to consider, I'm going to wrap this up now, okay, talking about quantum computers. I want you to consider quantum usefulness. And the real answers, when quantum usefulness starts with quantum supremacy, and those don't always, it's kind of like the dichotomy of there's a higher standard of living, but is that the same thing as a higher quality of life? No, they're not. They don't equate. Does quantum supremacy equate to quantum usefulness? And you could say, well, but then scientists would be able to figure this out quicker and this out quicker. Maybe. We don't know that. And in fact, it's good to question this shit, whether or not the quantum computer is actually going to come out with the right answer. And how do we verify that? Well, that's tough because we'd have to wait 10,000 years to verify the fucking answer. Or, I mean, we can experiment in real world application, but then let's be really fucking careful when we do that. So pay attention to quantum usefulness. That's the real thing. And that's what people are ignoring in a lot of these headlines and even in the stories themselves. I mean, I'll give IBM an edge on saying, there needs to be a quantum advantage. It has to actually do something useful. Yeah, well, the reason they're talking about that now is because they know it's a problem. So, anyway, quantum usefulness. Keep that in mind. We'll be right back with some more Sovryn Tech. Woo!
In 2014, he ran from Miami to San Francisco, raising awareness for Bitcoin and the homeless epidemic in America, and now he's doing it again. Blockchain evangelist and advocate for homeless rights Jason King is running across North America right now, from Miami to Santa Monica, right now. 5 years later, his commitment to promoting blockchain technology and fighting the homeless epidemic in America is stronger than ever. And you can help Jason now by going to blockchainacrossamerica.com. While you're there, donate to Satoshi Forest Sanctuary Incorporated to help the homeless, along with all kinds of other ways you can help. Get involved today. blockchainacrossamerica.com. That's blockchainacrossamerica.com. Hey, if you have a project that needs reliable cryptocurrency data, check out blocktap.io. BlockTap.io is a universal cryptocurrency API. You can get historical prices for Bitcoin and other digital assets that you can use to build charts and do market analysis. Blockchain data is also indexed, so you can get transaction statistics, address balances, and more for Bitcoin and other networks. BlockTap.io is free for personal use, and you don't even need to create an account to access the API. To get started, try some of the example queries on the homepage at blocktap.io. Again, that's BLOCKTAP.io. blocktap.io, and we thank them for sponsoring Sovryn Tech. Woo, let's get back to the show.
HackSec.
You know, if you want to get in a conversation, say, about how you feel about quantum computers, or maybe you just want to educate everyone on the matter, with your newfound knowledge and new terms when it comes to quantum computing, why don't you call into Free Talk Live? That's right, here's the metric that matters, okay? And this is proven. This is the real deal. The number 27 talk show in the United States. How could you not want to call into that? And it's an open phone show. You can call in. Believe me, I know. I used to be a host. You could just, I get very little information. Didn't really need to know much at all as far as, what you want to call in. I mean, there's practically almost no call screening. Just call right in. You can talk about whatever you want to talk about. Have a great time with it. freetalklive.com. It's a show that runs 7 nights a week, 3 hours per night. Can you believe that? I am always in awe of it as somebody that produces a lot of audio content. I'm still amazed. And it's been going for over a decade. Just go to freetalklive.com. You can listen to it there, but then you can actually call into the show. But freetalklive.com, that's the website. Go check it out. And I thank them for sponsoring Sovryn Tech. Oh man, it's been, I'm kind of overdue, I think, to be on that show again. I think I have like a standing invitation where I can just show up and they put me on the show. So, I was a host on there for 2 years. It's always a fun time. Anyway, let's get into, this is actually pretty similar to things we would, or that I would like to bring into to talk about on Free Talk Live, but we're going to talk about it here. And this is another conversation to have where I think we need to call a little bullshit, which we're pretty good at on Sovryn Tech, I like to think. And this is, the story specifically is from Gizmodo, and I know it's Gizmodo, but anyway. The story is why fast food is the ticking time bomb of job automation. Now, job automation in general. This is another one of those buzzwords, just like AI and machine learning and, what we were just talking about in quantum computers. Be afraid, and all this stuff. Anyway, stories from Brian Merchant. Well, another Brian. All right. From September 5th. Okay. So this is this year, September 5th, 2019, pretty fresh. I'm going to read a bit of the story here for you, and you're going to see why we need to talk about this and, what we're going to break it down. Because, this is an episode where we're just talking about what is supposed to be, what are you being told, what is being sold to you, marketed to you, that it's coming. Well, let's talk about it. On Tuesday, here's the story. On Tuesday, the automation-focused meme candidate, Andrew Yang, tweeted, "Fast food may be first." He was commenting on a new CNBC report that reported annual employee turnover rates of 100% at the Panera Bread chain, a figure that is low for the fast food industry, which can see annual turnover of to about 150%. So 100% is low. Stallion breaking in. 100% is low. 150%, yeah, that can happen. Those figures may seem ridiculous, but they're a reality. The fast food restaurants regularly see more than their entire workforce turnover every year. And that is why industry experts and Andrew Yang warn that it's ripe for automation and may be the first field to become entirely automated. Now, let's stop here for a second. Okay. The CNBC story that Andrew Yang shared, and I'm going to talk about Andrew Yang for a second, but the CNBC story is Panera is losing nearly 100% of its workers every year as fast food turnover crisis increases, whatever. Again, that number is basically meaningless in fast food. As somebody who, and we'll keep talking about this, but And I'm not saying I'm necessarily proud of it. I'm also not proud of it. But as somebody who worked in fast food for a good while, it's always been like, I mean, look, working in fast food, I know people want to rip on it. And, and that the pay isn't great and all that. I've talked about this many times. As somebody who, in my lifetime, I have lived out of my car in the past. I've talked about, in fact, when doing that, I'm still thinking about writing a book on how to do that. One of the things you can do is, anybody can get hired at fast food. And the metric is true that, you have, and because there was a time when I was like a teenager where I worked at fast food for, throughout high school. So for a few years, and I was one of the consistent people. And I saw entire teams change. I think the average fast food place maybe will top out at around 30 to 40 workers that are available at any given moment. Usually have about maybe 10 people on at a time. Depends on the fast food chain. That number can vary dramatically to where you only have 15 people on your employee list. Anyway, my point in saying this is that you can work at a fast food place and you can get benefits from working at a fast food place that go beyond your paycheck. Okay. Like if you're a really great worker, it's a good bet that a manager is going to hook you up. And if you are always willing to show up and work and whatever, manager might hook you up and, give you free food and you could basically eat for free. And I mean, look, if you can cut out almost your entire, grocery shopping, cost, right? What you spend in grocery shopping normally, and just eat fast food. And look, depending upon the fast food place, if you do it right, I think you can actually eat fairly healthy. Certainly, I mean, unless you're somebody that just buys all organic food and everything, I mean, you're not really going to get that comparison at fast food. But if you're somebody who, goes to, when you go to the grocery store or Walmart, maybe, whatever, and you're not buying into the organic and super healthy stuff, and you're not making crazy diet, and I don't mean crazy insultingly, but dramatic dietary choices, then yeah, I think you can get away with eating actually somewhat, if not as healthy, maybe healthier than what you would end up buying at on the lower end at a lot of grocery stores. Okay. And you could get that for free. You could cut out your grocery bill. There's a lot of options. I mean, there's so many fringe benefits that can happen. I've talked about this often also, where at a lot of these, and this isn't just true in fast food, this is true at a lot of lower, as far as low pay retail jobs, where co-ops, impromptu, decentralized co-ops really do get set up where, you'll have a bunch of gals and maybe they have children, and one gal will watch, the other coworkers' children on Thursday, then the other one watches them on Friday, and that covers daycare. So there's ways to make up, even if you are in a quote unquote low end or low paid job, if you're good at what you do, there are a lot of ways to make up for, say, a not so great paycheck. Okay. But bottom line being is that, yeah, most people, fast food is some kind of stepping stone to getting them through high school, college, whatever, or getting them to where they can pay for college, getting them to that next level. I understand that. And because of that, sure, turnover rates are exceptionally high, probably just about the highest within any other industry. Okay. So to say that 100% of workers are getting changed every year at Panera, that's not a crisis. That's a low ball. All right. Those are low numbers, quite frankly. So there's some bullshit on that. But let's talk about Andrew Yang for a minute. And then we're going to talk more about this automation and maybe what's coming. Okay. Let's talk about Andrew Yang. This guy is seen as, he's running for president right now for 2020. I think Democrat Party. I think he's an idiot, and I'll prove it. Okay. In just a second. But he is seen as one of the tech savvy politicians. Okay. And so, Silicon Valley gets kind of hot and bothered about this guy. And a lot of your more, I don't know, there's other people who are big in the tech space who get hot and bothered about Andrew Yang. I mean, first off, I'm an anarchist. I don't get excited about any fucking politician. Fuck them all. They're all scumbags. Okay. But whatever. Andrew Yang, here's a tweet. In fact, this is just when I was prepping for this. This is a tweet from September 20th. This year, 2019. So just a couple days ago. As a parent of young kids, this is Andrew Yang. As a parent of young kids, I believe rampant access to pornography is a real problem. We need to empower families to be able to moderate what our kids see and when. Now, I know what you're thinking. The Golden Stallion's going to be like, oh, there's no problem with pornography. I don't need to go there. I don't need to go there. Regardless of whether I think, the rampant access to pornography is a good or bad thing, that doesn't matter. Okay? And I'm not going to comment on that. Here's the rub. We need to, let me read the second sentence from Andrew Yang. We need to empower families to be able to moderate what our kids see and when. I'm pretty sure parental controls and software there too was created decades ago. And it's built into every fucking device. Smartphones, hell, even e-readers, Nintendo, your game consoles, everything, your television, everything has fucking parental controls built into it. Andrew Yang, what the fuck are you talking about, you goddamn moron? So, I mean, that's pure political poppycock, that he's engaging in there. And if he's and the sad part is, if he's supposedly one of the tech-savvy politicians, holy shit, are we in trouble? Because his statement was asinine, and we already have all this stuff. And largely, the stuff works. Fucking moron. I mean, what's he going to do? Is he going to, propose what they're doing in the UK? Like they're doing in Britain? Where basically the government is going to be able to take over the internet, and it's all under the auspices of, we have to control porn. And so we need to spy on every British citizen. I mean, there aren't enough cameras around in Britain? Fuck. Anyway, so Andrew Yang, take everything he says with an absolute grain of salt. In fact, don't even waste the salt. Even a grain of it on this guy. But let's read on with the story. Let's talk about this whole automation thing. So first off, the crisis doesn't exist, but let's keep going. They're right. This is the story. They're right that fast food is as ripe as any industry is for transformative automation. Typically, one of the major sources of resistance to automating a process, task, or entire job is the impact it will have on a salaried employee. Layoffs look bad for the company doing the automating. All right, now let's cut in on that. It looks bad, not to investors. I mean, you could say it looks bad to investors, but it looks bad to the everyday person. Okay, let's be clear on that, but let's read on. There are myriad social factors in play that create resistance. Management will be reluctant to fire longtime employees, for one. And there is risk involved in setting up new machinery, which may take years to get running smoothly. Stallion breaking in, this is true. You can just read the technician reports from these automated... ATMs are doing a very simple thing. Not to say there aren't security issues with those, but your automated cashiers, okay, at Walmart or at Hannaford or whatever grocery chain you go to where there's the automated thing. There's a reason they're telling you to only go up to them with a few items. And that's because, problems begin to happen. I mean, they're starting to get ironed out, but those automated cashiers were introduced. Well, I think the first ones I ever remember seeing were probably 20 years ago. And it took this long for them to even get remotely to this stage. Oof. We're a long way out for a lot of this other stuff. Let's keep reading. But in an industry that turns its entire staff over every year, especially one in which the bulk of its jobs are intended to be an agglomeration of repetitive tasks like taking and inputting orders, adding and arranging ingredients to a dish, and cleaning floors and tables, corporations and middle management will spend a lot less time weighing social factors and nursing concerns about optics. Hell, fast food is already one of the worst regarded jobs because workers are openly treated with so little dignity, the benefits range from threadbare to non-existent, and the wages are so low. Stallion breaking in again, that's kind of bullshit on Gizmodo's part, because like I said, and I can tell you from personal experience, if you're actually good at your job, you might not get health insurance, okay, which maybe that's more what they're talking about, but there are benefits to be had. Anyway, let's keep going. All of which is to say, as soon as the fast food companies can automate those jobs, They will. The only things preventing those companies from doing so are the projected costs and the functionality of the automated systems. That's it. This, by the way, is why it's so specious of restaurant industry CEOs to claim that if they're made to pay restaurant workers a few more bucks an hour, it will force them to adopt automation. The Fight for 15 campaign has been organizing workers to raise restaurant wages, and threats of automation have been a persistent bit of propaganda deployed to counter their efforts. For one thing, fast food executives are already trying as hard as they can to do exactly that. McDonald's, for instance, is reportedly spending $1 billion on automated ordering kiosks this year alone. As it stands, wages would have to spike exorbitantly high to put execs in a position where they'd be willing to bet on constantly untested back-of-house automation technologies for food prep. Even more kiosks, which let's be clear, it remains unclear just how much labor savings they offer, and an extensive training program to familiarize employees with all the above. Now, we don't know. Again, this idea of putting in more kiosks, right? Particularly with McDonald's, which you could argue that whatever direction McDonald's goes, that's the direction that the entire fast food industry and much of the restaurant industry will go. Okay, because McDonald's is willing to spend the money to experiment with a lot of this stuff. I can tell you, actually, okay, I'll say it. I'll talk about it a little bit. I'll be very broad here, okay? I have worked for companies that had contracts in the fast food industry, maybe with Golden Arches, and they were experimenting with all kinds of software, point of sale software and otherwise. And the amount of problems, I can tell you this, that one piece of software was in development for about 10 years, and it just kept running into roadblock after roadblock, problem after problem, and they were spending, I don't even want to know how much money the fast food industry, was spending on new office servers to handle this point of sale software. I can't imagine. I can actually, because I might have seen some reports, or someone might have, who was there, maybe showed it to me. You know where I'm going with this. This shit. They can have all the ideas and they can threaten all the automation and everything that they want, because maybe this point of sale software, this experimental point of sale software, was actually trying to make it so that orders could be taken from a central location and you didn't actually have to have, say, through a drive-through, an order taker right there, and you could automate that process. It never worked. And it wasn't because of a lack of processing power. It wasn't because of a lack of infrastructure. We are talking about not that long ago. Okay, there's plenty of internet and internet speeds to go around. It's because the software itself and the process, the actual process of dealing with the customer, ran into rampant problems. And that is going to be, I'll repeat that sentiment as we read on here. Okay, let's go. So, somewhat hilariously, these sky-high turnover rates that have analysts predicting automation madness to solve the fast food industry's retention problem, it's expensive to constantly recruit and train workers, can alternatively be combated with relatively simple means, offering your employees a modicum of dignity, a little time off, and some benefits. Starbucks, a mega profitable franchise chain, has a retention rate of 65%, precisely because it offers those things and is still mega profitable. Now, Stallion breaking in, we could get into that whole argument of, maybe like treat fast food jobs with a little more, like they're saying, dignity. I'm guessing they're arguing for health insurance, higher wages and all that. And then maybe, it would work. We're not going to go there. We don't need to talk about that, but let's read on. For all those reasons, fast food is a powerful bellwether for automation, a canary in the coal mine for the phenomenon more generally. I don't know if fast food will be first. I'd probably still put my money on some subset of the manufacturing industry, somewhere bosses can justify more expensive machinery because the workers they replace are often skilled and therefore expensive too, but the sector provides something close to the ideal conditions for the total automation of corporate service work. This matters because there's still a lot of ambiguity about what automation can reasonably accomplish at reasonably affordable rates right now. There's so much gray area between what business-to-business enterprise automation solution companies promise Fortune 500 firms and what automation can actually be, or what automation can actually be achieved, that sometimes it's hard to get a picture of how capable and cost-effective corporate automation really is. Retail chains have been trying for decades to automate ordering and checkout, which Stallion, breaking in I was just talking about, for instance, and humans are still doing the vast majority of the labor. Yet there's no doubt that companies are relentlessly developing and pitching new automation systems, some aimed squarely at the fast food industry. This is why I don't think it's fair to say that the day you see a success, or that's why I do think it's fair to say that the day you see a successful, fully functional, and fully automated marquee franchised fast food restaurant, if that day ever comes, that day will indeed be a harbinger for the rest of the economy. Before then, I'd watch out, and this is an interesting point that gets brought up here. Before then, I'd watch out for more faux-tomation. Okay, F-A-U-X, faux-tomation. More jobs outsourced to gig economy workers at places like Grubhub. Delivery is one of the few growth spots in the fast food economy, and I bet we'll soon see fast food, including those gigs, in its job creation figures. That day will be the day that we'll know that automation really is capable of replacing low-paying human labor at scale. The day there are no humans working at McDonald's, that's the day the so-called robot jobs apocalypse will have truly begun. Okay, let's talk about this. Now, talking about this as a bellwether, okay, for automation in general, which is why, Silicon Valley is really hot on automation, everything getting switched over to algorithms, blah, blah, blah. And this is why we need universal basic income, because everybody is going to be out of a fucking job. No. I do believe, let me make this clear. I do believe that here's really what's going to happen. Okay, Andrew Yang's a moron. I hope we made that clear. I do believe that a lot of Silicon Valley, Facebook, Google, go down the list of any tech giant in the Sinister Six, whoever. I do believe that a lot of major tech companies are looking to, if they have a service, say like, Facebook, Instagram, stuff like this. Now, a lot of what has to be done for human curation there, the human elements at those kinds of businesses, where it's a lot of website work and whatever else, okay? And, you have to moderate for this and blah, 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 but it's basically exists online. That is where automation is going to take over. That's a place where it's going to take over. That is where they are trying to get rid of humans, and they only have humans in those jobs right now. Like, oh, is this image okay on the Facebook timeline or is it not? Blah, blah, blah. The only reason, or even with, like having humans on the back end of virtual assistant software, which is also very popular. That is a temporary situation because, now maybe it won't work at all, but the idea there is that those humans, everything they're doing is being tracked and is being used to teach an algorithm, okay, to do that job in the future. Like we talked recently about the privacy fiasco this year over Alexa, over Amazon's Alexa, where we find out, oh shit, actually humans are listening to what Alexa's saying. Same is true for Google Home, and transcripts are being kept and all this. Okay, all of that, even those humans that are there listening, while that's a problem in and of itself, those humans are really just there to input their human judgment and then have the algorithm that'll eventually completely power Alexa or Google Home or Google Assistant, whatever, to teach it what to do in those scenarios. Okay, it is all an educational process for algorithms. I don't even want to call it AI, algorithms, okay? So that's an area where, yes, Facebook, Google, the tech giants, they would love to automate the shit out of 90% of their workforce, if not more. That's something that's a reality. Fast food chains, as far as this goes, let me tell you what exactly is going to happen here. Now, I am somebody, okay, like I said, I've put some years in the fast food business. I have seen directly a lot of the plans, and look, not just working at the restaurants. I have spent years working on the tech that these, and I don't mean the ovens, okay, or the fryers or the fry leaders. I don't mean that. I mean the actual tech that these companies use. All right, I have been knee deep in this space for a huge chunk of my life. And let me tell you what's going to happen here. Okay, people aren't going to get automated out of jobs. No. That can't happen because and I'll tell you why. Because in fact, I think this was talked about on some show I was on some years ago, that there was a machine that could make sandwiches, and they've been making these for a while, that could make, a burger, and it could make it inside of like 10 seconds. And everybody was like, whoa, that's fucking amazing. Okay. First off, and I know I said this when we talked about it on whatever show that was, I can make a sandwich in 7 seconds. So, and believe me when I tell you, if you want a repeat customer at a restaurant, you give them amazing service, right? This is true fast food or otherwise. You give them amazing fucking service. You make that person feel like they're so goddamn special. You know what people love through a drive-thru? If they spend less than 30 seconds sitting in that drive-thru. They get the food, they're gone, boom, they're out. They love that. And that'll bring them back. I worked at a Wendy's in Florida. Okay? That was world renowned in Central Florida. Literally known around the world. People would talk about this Wendy's. Why? Because you could go through the drive-thru and you would be out of there inside of 22 seconds. You make your order, boom, gone. The only slow spot was the person giving the order. And that is the sore spot overall in this whole rub, is that no amount of automation is going to be able to handle. Okay, now there's a sequel to this. Okay, but there is no amount of automation that is going to be able to handle a fast food customer. It's not. And I've been there on the ground floor, seeing or hearing, or pick your term that makes me legally okay, the software that was supposed to be able to handle, and it can't. You have people coming up who are just, drunk or whatever else, not in their right mind, or they're like, give me, and I mean, and they don't know what they want. They change their mind when they get to the window. All right. This is just through drive-through, where you think automation would be kind of like the first place that you can make it happen. They will change their mind right there. What is I mean, are you going to make a device that, okay, hand me back the burger, and do all this or whatever? I mean, because what's going to happen is, here's the deal. So when somebody would do that and say, I already, say it was a situation where you're going as fast as humanly possible and you're getting people through drive-through, okay? This has broad ramifications to all areas of industry when it comes to automation. There are places where I think automation is going to take over. One of them being, and I know people don't like to hear this, but truck driving. I think that's a place where automation is actually going to take over. But anyway, getting sidetracked. So you bring the person through, okay? And you hand them the bag. Like you're all set. You made it. You made that double cheeseburger with no pickles and you already handed it to them. If you handed that sandwich out the door, I'm not going to ask for it back. And I'm saying this from a managerial position. I'm not going to ask for it back. Fine. You keep that and we'll make you another one. Now, if somebody does that over and over again, you could start losing out on food cost on this, right? And it could become a problem. Well, that's when you hope that your worker or the manager recognizes the person regularly. And, that's why the cashier at the window at the fast food place yells out, hey, I need this. I need one that's no pickles or whatever. Okay. I mean, there's a few different ways that this could all go down that a human can make it very quickly. Like maybe they'll just take the sandwich back and they'll take the pickles off of it, whatever. Okay. But if it's already out the door, you leave it out the door. And that's good business because the customer will remember, holy shit, they just let me take this free food. Great. If it happens over and over again, then the manager can step in and say, okay, buddy, like this is getting ridiculous, and you'll do something to put a stop to it. No machine, no automation, no kiosk is going to be able to handle that. And in fact, if the order of the day for the kiosk is to, say, if it's to like, okay, let them keep the burger and then just make them a new one and hand that out the door, then people are going to cheat the fuck out of the system. Food costs are going to go through the roof. And you might as well have just paid the fucking human being a little couple extra bucks to where they'd want to stay at the job perhaps, and not bothered buying all this fucking automation because your food costs are going to eat your entire corporation alive. So that's not going to happen. Like, or if anything, the mistake's going to get made and it's going to get figured out. And don't tell me, don't even begin to tell me that like, oh, we're going to use facial recognition software and these kiosks are going to, be able to recognize the person and who's a troublemaker. You want people to like start storming the gates, have them have a fucking kiosk, have a computer or a machine tell them they're wrong And holy hell, you're going to have a riot on your hand. Especially with people who maybe feel they don't have anything better to do and, might frequent, and I'm not knocking people that go to fast food places. I do it sometimes too. And like I said, I am not proud of my work at fast food. It's fucking work. I earned money, goddammit, when I did it. And actually, look, it's informing this conversation that has broad ramifications for the future. I'm glad I did it. So I'm not knocking it. I'm not knocking anyone here, but understand that oftentimes it's people late at night who just want some fucking food and, whatever. And sometimes those people can be a problem. And no amount of automation is going to be able to handle that human element. It's one of our major sovereign tech sayings. Artificial intelligence is no match for natural stupidity. And that's true everywhere, including in the fast food industry. If McDonald's tries this, they are going to learn a multi-billion-dollar lesson that might even tank that fucker. If they gave this a shot. This is not happening. There are places where automation is going to become a thing. Okay? It really is. But you know what? There's two things that are going to happen here. Here's what I think is actually going to happen with fast food. If somebody tries this, there's going to be a fast food chain that's going to start marketing. Marketing's everything, remember. Okay, they're going to start marketing, we have the human touch. And, you can deal with a human being and there's going to be a smile on the face. Whatever, and people are going to remember that and they're going to stop at that fast food chain instead of having to deal with the fucking machine. Guarantee you that's going to happen. If this actually becomes a thing. But here's really what's going to become a thing. And the Gizmodo article actually hinted at it. It actually hinted at what the future is going to be. And that is, TaskRabbit, Grubhub, all of these like little delivery services. I think there's a very good chance that in the future, you actually won't go to a McDonald's anymore. McDonald's will just come to you. And the real jobs that are going to be available are this gig economy shit, which is neo-feudalism and talk about degrading. I have real problems with this whole gig economy stuff. I really do. There are really, really perverse shit going on within this that I think is a problem. That is another conversation for another time. But we'll stick with this here. Okay, is that the jobs are going to be delivery people. Look, we don't have robots that are just going to, no one's going to be launching drones out of McDonald's anytime soon. That's not going to be happening. And if it does, the freegan movement, freegans, people that get food for free, dumpster divers and all that, which I have total respect for them. The freegan movement's going to have a freaking field day because they're going to be, talk about tech savvy people. They're going to be lobbing microwave jammers at these things. They're going to be getting free food all day long. You're going to need human beings delivering this food. And that's probably where the fast food industry is going to morph. They're going to take a lesson from Amazon, right? Where Amazon can do, what is it, Amazon Now, where they can deliver shit to you in major cities inside of 30 minutes, right? They'll have a bicycle messenger deliver your package to you. Okay. That's more of what's going to happen out of this, is that if they find that, if there was a real turnover problem and a real employee problem in the fast food industry, that's what'll happen is that they'll turn all of their places, you'll have like little McDonald's places where there's a bunch of machines in there making all the burgers and all this stuff. And what they'll do is that you'll order it through your smartphone and then a human will just, with Grubhub or whatever, will show up and deliver it to you. That's how that's going to work. Or you'll do it through the McDonald's app or whatever. And you'll do it from the comfort of your home, maybe while you're wearing your Oculus headset and you never have to get off of your ass and away you go. That's the future. Not automation, taking these jobs and you still end up going to McDonald's and just a robot serves you. No. That's not how this is going to work, because it can't work that way. It just can't. Maybe you could set it up to where you could pick it up through the McDonald's app and there'll be something that'll just hand it to you through the window. But then I still think you're going to run into the issue where, maybe you want to change your order and the robot just won't know what to do. And that can start eating into food cost. But as far as like with Grubhub, and people just getting it right to their door. Yeah, the idea of keeping people locked away in their homes has been a dream, I think, of a lot of corporations and governments, quite frankly. It's corporatism since the 70s. And, maybe that's more of a direction that things will go. Sorry to end on a dour note or on a sour note with that. Of course, what's the answer to all this? Well, the answer to all this really is, of course, sure as fuck isn't like getting a guy like Andrew Yang into the presidency, and making some kind of crazy laws about this. The answer to this is really educating people, as it always is, turning people into educated consumers and getting them to know that, well, here's the thing, right? Like, consider this. If people actually ate, now, there's not one diet that works for everybody. Okay, like vegetarianism or veganism does not work for everyone, right? Some people have conditions or whatever else where, meat is order of the day. Okay, vice versa. We are a dynamic species as humanity, and there's not just one diet that works for everybody. We all experiment with ourselves and figure things out. But essentially, if people were conscious of their diet, I pretty much guarantee you most people would not go to fast food at all. Okay, and that would completely fall away in and of itself. So the jobs would disappear and the industry itself would completely disappear if we had an educated, and one acting in its self-interest, clientele, okay, or customer base for a lot of this stuff. There just wouldn't be a customer base anymore because they'd be like, oh no, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to eat there anymore. If people, cared that much and et cetera. But then that raises... Here's the thing, is that the solution to all this stuff raises so many huge economical problems. Okay, like why can people say, you have certain people who talk about how, no, McDonald's is a great thing because it allows poor people to eat. Why are these people poor in the first place? I mean, this gets into such huge issues, or what are teenagers going to do if their first jobs aren't at McDonald's? Then where are they going to, get their first jobs if McDonald's doesn't exist in the future, and so on. These are concerns to have, but I think they have answers. Just like a lot, we have access to so much information today. I think, that a lot of young people can become, entrepreneurs for themselves and create their own jobs. And this turns into a massive subject. But the solution's on the table. Automation is not the solution for any of this stuff. Making laws that somehow try to fix the fast food industry is not going to solve any of this. The direction that this stuff is going to go may not necessarily be a good thing either. But these require massive conversations, and certainly it requires answers that just one person like myself can't deliver. One man can make a difference. But I would not begin to suggest that I have the answers to fucking everything. No way. So this is a big problem. And that's also another reason why, sure as fuck, if you think that the person raising the red flag about this is this one guy that we should vote into, office in some White House, no. He's not going to have the answers. He doesn't even know parental controls exist. Oh. Don't look to politicians for answers on this, but sure as fuck don't look at corporate execs either, because if they think that automation is going to do this stuff, they're dumber and their businesses deserve to tank. Okay, they deserve to go away, and our young people are better off not going to work for them. So anyway, that's it for this episode of Sovryn Tech. We'll wrap this one up. I was going to get into a movie review for the climax, but that's all right. We'll wrap it up with this, and you got a triple load coming, so you got another episode of Sovryn Tech coming up. Maybe I can finally get to that movie review then. And you know a movie I'm going to be catching? I know you're going to be surprised by this, but we'll get in a review. Rambo Last Blood. I can't help it. I'm a huge fan of Sylvester Stallone. I got to see it. Anyway, so that'll be something coming up as well. But we didn't get to Simjacker in this episode. We are going to get into that in the next episode, along with some more conversation around Android phones specifically, even though Simjacker affects all mobile phones. So anyway, we'll get into that in the next episode. Do a nice big security special maybe. But that's it for this one. I will see all of you on the other side. And go sign up for Zomia 1. Get more content. Zomia1.com. Can't miss it. You can sign up, support the show, and get thousands of hours of content. I'll see you, hopefully there, and then I'll see you on the other side.
You just experienced Sovryn Tech. Go to sovryntech.com, that's SOVRYN tech.com, and connect with us there. Find links from today's show and catch our podcast feed. Sovryn Tech is copy heart. Copying art is an act of love, and love is not subject to law. So please share the show however you like. Welcome to the evolution.